class that the faculty member thinks doesn't need to be there in the first place, that they leave STEM fields and they go out and teach and they aren't well prepared to do that. So there's a crossover in terms of when we want to improve K-12 education, it starts at our institutions. Workforce development, and then recruitment and retention of underrepresented students in STEM fields. So the good news is we're focused on pedagogy at AAU, but other people and other associations are looking closely at these other issues. We work closely with the Association of Public and Land-Grant Universities. They have a major initiative. In fact, our initiative is somewhat based, and we took some cues from the from APLU in terms of their big initiative to improve K-12 teacher development and to better train science teachers at the K-12 level. The Business Higher Education Forum has been particularly focused on working and bringing industry more into the fold in terms of trying to figure out what their needs are. They've got some major programs, one just here locally where they're working with the University of Maryland on a major cybersecurity initiative, and then they've got the aerospace industry, and I think Northrop Grumman has provided with a major grant, because that's an area where they know there's a workforce need, there's a workforce shortage, and how can they better train students at the undergraduate level to help to meet that need. Project Kaleidoscope, which is largely focused and work with liberal arts schools, but they do have some research universities. They have been involved in this space, and we know as we move forward with our initiative, we have a lot to learn from Project Kaleidoscope, but they've particularly focused on issues related to faculty development and policy. I mentioned, we've already talked about us. The disciplinary societies are really important from our perspective. They have started, and over the summer I attended the American Physical Society runs a new teachers workshop for young faculty. They're looking at those workshops and how they can expand them, how they can do better. Oftentimes, even though they teach these pedagogical approaches, they are finding that one time is not enough, that the faculty, even though they go back, they know the practices, but they don't have the institutional support. So, but the disciplinary societies are getting engaged, which is a good thing. So there's other efforts. We have actually at AU been trying to track these efforts. We've helped to form a coalition of these various groups that's trying to work together, so we make sure that we're leveraging off each other's efforts and not duplicating, so we can push this all forward together. So the good news, I think we really are at a point where we can see broad-based change, but as I started, it's not going to be easy. It's going to take some time, but I think we're very excited at AU about taking on this challenge. So with that, I would welcome any questions or comments you have.
Use the microphone, please.
It's interesting that you said that the liberal arts colleges often have more students going into graduate programs.
Yes.
Is that because they place greater emphasis on teaching in terms of the faculty graduation and tenure?
Well, people like Tom Chapman, I know he often has said that's the case. We can't be sure. It could just be because we have more students, but I'm not sure. I think we think that there's a problem. And it probably is because there's more emphasis on teaching, and we've tended to scare students away from some of these fields by the way in which they're taught. So I do think that's the concern, and that's one of the reasons we're pushing forward with our effort.
I'd like to raise a possible answer to that thing, which I think is terribly disturbing, that research universities don't turn out as many graduate students in STEM fields as undergraduate colleges. A lot of the undergraduate colleges are breeding grounds, I guess you could say, for pre-meds who major in the STEM fields and then apply to medical school. Not nearly all of them can get into medical school, and I think then they take a fallback position of going to graduate school in their major, so do people think that this could be true and that this could be the explanation for this? And it also makes alerts us to something that's really too bad if our more motivated science undergraduates are targeting medical school rather than being scientists. That's another problem. I don't know how to solve that, of course, but it's a bad problem.
I'll just comment, because I'm not sure that pre-med students necessarily more pre-med students go to liberal arts colleges, because a lot end up at our research universities. So I'm not sure that's the reason. It is true, as we've studied this, it's interesting, a lot of the pre-med students are very competitive, so they are sometimes the students who least like classes where they interact and feel like they are sharing information and helping their colleagues to learn, because they're very competitive. So that's something that actually we know may be a truism, but a lot of it's anecdotal.
I'll offer an answer to that question. I think the major reason is the significant focus on undergraduate research at liberal arts institutions.
Yes.
The Oberlin Nifty 50, that was the first study over 32 years ago, showed that undergraduate research was the reason these kids went on to graduate school. And that's what your data is showing, and that's the reason. And you're exactly right, that the number of pre-meds is greater at the state institutions than the private liberal arts colleges. And certainly the physical sciences, not many of those are in pre-med, and most of those are the ones that go on to graduate school. But I do have a question, or a comment. I agree with you that we don't need more studies. We've got plenty of studies. We know what works. And actually, the only study you need to do is between the research universities and liberal arts colleges to find out why it works so well at liberal arts colleges. And I think
And part of it is
and you're doing part of that with Pell Scholars. But you will see that it's the engaged teaching that occurs and it's undergraduate research focused. But I will also say that you don't need more studies, but you do need more resources for these institutions. And so I think a challenge is to convince the National Science Foundation, as you pointed out, that they need to put the resources into undergraduate education and not all the resources in the research university research, because if there are no graduate students, that money is wasted. And bringing international students in to do research is not the answer to our competitiveness problem and to our workforce problem. So I would urge you to do more with NSF leadership to convince them that the broader impacts component is about education. And what's really ironic is the career awards at NSF. I sat on a couple of those panels, and the focus there is on the education outreach part and the what I would call the broader impacts part. And that's what distinguishes the ones that get funded from the ones that don't. So they get the career award, and the next NSF proposal they write for research, they drop that whole thing about broader impacts. It's really ironic how that works. So that's sort of my comments. I urge you to do more with NSF to get them to focus on the education component, both at high school and at college level.
Last question. Okay, last two.
I just wanted to know if you have any practical suggestions for getting faculty to respect evidence-based teaching methods. I'm in the math department, and there's an enormous disdain for mathematics education. And it's almost inconceivable that we would even hire such a person to help us, carry out some methods to advance. So what can we do about that? I mean, people just don't, we're supposed to be scientists, but they don't care about the science.
I don't know that I have any great answers to that one. Trying to show the evidence, one of the things we hope is that we create, by getting respected faculty who say, you've got to change, and disciplinary societies involved, that will happen. The other thing I say, and I'm going to go back to the agency's notion, one of the things we put in our demonstrations, one of the things that helps, and that I think we've got a big problem with, is how do we ingrain the notion that departments should have somebody whose focus is on education within that discipline. This is someplace where I think agencies, and I've told it to industry too, because industry, I've been to the VHDS as a Business Higher Education Forum, as their industry folks meet. They say, you endow chairs all the time in research. What if we couldn't create a program that actually focused on creating endowed chairs in disciplinary-based educational research, where there's a person whose job it is, and research is about how students best learn, and that person then becomes the person within the department. And this will not be easy because of the disdain you say, faculty, and I've heard time and time again, have for these practices, but that person, if they're embedded over time and they're well-funded, because that's what really is important, I think could have an impact, because the reality is there will still be people in that math department, or whatever department it is, who do want to do a better job, and they will go to that person and they will ask for help if they are there. Because right now, those people to help, and given the time commitments of, what the stresses are on research faculty, there's no easy way to get the help, even if you want to improve your teaching. So that would be something where I think I would love to see some more support. Because that's what's driven the research agenda. That's what, it's the well-funded research piece. And so I agree absolutely that there's A to Z's and other ways to do that. So that would be one thought on that. But it's not going to be easy.
Well, I wanted to thank you for your presentation, and I think it's especially important that your initiative is coming from the research university, because the rest of us at comprehensive universities, community colleges, liberal arts colleges, look to the R1s for what's the guide. And I'm really thinking of the faculty. And your presentation is a continuation of my conversation this morning, where we're talking about the wars in departments between those who want to focus on more students, getting more students to succeed, and those who are happy with serving this weed-out function. So the faculty at all of these institutions can benefit from this. So I was wondering if you have any part of this initiative that involves some kind of local engagement. You already mentioned the liberal arts colleges know how to do some of this better, maybe not all of it. So I think looking to the local liberal arts colleges for leadership is helpful. But I think looking the other way, of working locally with other higher education institutions could be useful, because my faculty, I'm a dean, my faculty reflect upon what was their own experience in graduate school. And they use that as their guide to how to teach. So some kind of come down is the attitude of some. So if the local top universities are doing something different, then it can be really important, all of the other institutions to say, look, this is the way it's done now, the world changing.
Yeah, and it's a good point, because one of the, I just gave the same talk someplace else, and because we're 61 universities, people say, well, that's only for AAU. The hope is, we are supposed to be leaders, and I can tell you there's a constant interest in institutions getting into AAU. We're building new research universities, and we think that if we can change the way our institutions are doing things, where frankly we have not been doing very well in this area, and we're admitting that we can do better, we can have an impact, because we do train those students who teach at those other institutions. We do have a lot to learn from the liberal arts colleges, and we know that. And that's why we're working very closely with organizations like PCAL, where they've actually been working with those institutions, and actually under the leadership, we have brought on as a senior advisor to our effort Linda Slakey, who's the former division director of undergraduate education at NSF. She's helping to build a coalition of these organizations to help make sure we're all talking to each other. So we're, again, learning from those other organizations. And I think at some point we hope to convene the different across institutions to learn from each other. I think that's, when we talk about the work that we're doing with the Cottrell Scholars and others, part of that's we see a series of workshops that we'll get to trying to bring people together across different types of institutions to learn from each other. So,
Thank you.
Appreciate it.